talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Hey folks, welcome to the program. Thanks so much for being with us today. My name is Paul. You have found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality, where we are building a liberty machine. We got a great show for you coming up at the top of the next hour. So an hour from now, we'll be talking with Sally C. Pipes. Actually, I already spoke with her yesterday, but we had a great interview. You might recognize her. She's from the Pacific Research Institute. She's been doing this for years. It's out of San Francisco. She has several books about the dangers of socialized medicine, how Obamacare was a disaster. We talked to her about her latest article. She has an article bi-weekly in Forbes called Piping Up. She was recently on Mark Levin's Fox News show on the weekend there and did a great job. And, you know, Mark Levin's doing a fantastic job, obviously, especially with his long-form interviews, just something that and really what that's tapping into is the long-form podcasts that are coming back in a big way. And just people wanting to sit down and people wanting to listen to interesting guests talk, not in short, 60-second or 3-minute CNN news pieces where you have to go to break after 3 minutes, but people want to sit down. And who knew it would get this long? I mean, it certainly is a hat tip to William F. Buckley and everything that he did. But we sat down with Sally C. Pipes yesterday, and we're going to let you hear that interview coming up at 7:05. Then at 7:33 this morning, we'll be talking with State Representative Joe Cloud, and Dr. Joe Cloud will be giving us his opinion, his impression of the session, if you will, now that the Arkansas 92nd General Assembly has concluded. The telephone number this morning, if you would like to contribute, 870-275-9799. As always, call or text that number. Now, let's begin with we have a lot to get to here. The big news is that William Barr, the Attorney General of the United States, has appointed a United States attorney out of Connecticut to investigate the FBI, the Department of Justice, spying on the Trump campaign. He's investigated the FBI before. The guy's name is John Durham, again, U.S. Attorney from Connecticut. And this is interesting because we have a lot of investigations going on right now. Now that you have the U.S. Attorney, John Durham, being appointed by William Barr to investigate how the Russia hoax started, let's just call it that. How the Department of Justice's behavior concerning that. That's running parallel to Michael Horowitz, the Justice Department Inspector General, and his report is due out. And I'll reference when former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee a couple weeks ago subbed in for Laura Ingraham on Fox News and interviewed Joe DeGeneva. I always have trouble with that name. And the stuff that he was saying, go look at that about how these reports were coming out about Comey and everything else very, very soon. This is also in addition to the Utah prosecuting attorney, John Huber, who is investigating how the FBI handled the Clinton email scandal. So you understand, there are basically now three lines of investigation. And who knows what Mr. Durham has been doing. I just wonder if he's been investigating before. Actually, matter of fact, I think there is evidence to suggest, because there was a letter written by Jim Jordan, I believe, referencing Durham a while ago. Let's see here. Hang on one second. Of note, okay, listen to this. Of note, in January, this is from the Zero Hedge article. In January, House Republicans Jim Jordan and Mark Meadows wrote to Durham. Okay, this is all the way back in January they wrote to Durham, saying that they had discovered he, was, quote, investigating former FBI General Counsel James Baker. Now, James Baker is the guy that we told you about yesterday who said he was nervous about the Justice Department now investigating the origins of the Justice Department's investigation into the Trump campaign for Russia collusion. He said he's nervous about it. And, of course, now the FBI higher-ups who are no longer there, the mainstream media are telling you they're patriots, and they're going to say, when their charges filed, they're going to say that essentially this is a banana republic. I mean, that's the goal here, that this is a banana republic. So Durham has a history of serving as special prosecutor. I want to get back to this part. Hang on, where did this go? I just had it in front of my... Oh, right. Okay, so James Baker over unauthorized leaks to media adding, "We know the DOJ and FBI departed from traditional investigative prosecutorial practices and insufficiently adhered to the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act." Durham has a history of serving as a special prosecutor investigating wrongdoing. Again, so now you have Durham, Horowitz, and Huber. Will something come out of this? I don't know. But I do know this. The Democrat Party right now, and when I say the Democrat Party, I mean the media as well, because the mainstream media are continuing to actively deceive the people that listen to them and trust them for information. They're trying to destroy this country right now because they don't agree with the outcome of the 2016 election. And their logic will change, their moral outrage changes based on the news of the day. And the perfect example of this is Rod Rosenstein. Rod Rosenstein was the left's guy. I was skeptical of Rod Rosenstein. I thought he was a deep state guy. He might still be a deep state guy, but saw the handwriting on the wall. You know what I mean? Rod Rosenstein was in charge of all of this, originally recommended James Comey's firing. But they were all saying 6-7 months ago, as little as 2-3 months ago, Rod Rosenstein. If you fire Rod Rosenstein, then that's obstruction of justice. They were doing everything they could. Do you remember when Rod Rosenstein was supposedly fired? The media reported that Rod Rosenstein supposedly was fired, and then he had to go to the White House, and the president wasn't there. He was abroad. It was very strange. It's almost as if the media wanted Rod Rosenstein to be fired. There was the New York Times piece that said that Rosenstein had talked with Andrew McCabe about putting a wire on the president, right, using the 25th Amendment. McCabe is now admitted to saying he was trying to rally support on the president's cabinet to oust him via 25th Amendment. What does that sound like to you? I mean, it sounds like a plot from Game of Thrones is what it sounds like. And so the New York Times piece puts that out there, and then they're like, oh, is the president going to fire him? Well, if the president fires him, that's obstruction of justice. Well, he didn't fire Rod Rosenstein, and Rod Rosenstein was the one that originally recommended Comey's firing. And then Rod Rosenstein was standing right there agreeing with Attorney General William Barr about the conclusions of the Mueller report. And so now they hate Rod Rosenstein, but they used to say that he was a red line. That Mueller was a red line. You fire Mueller, that's a red line, as well as Rosenstein was a red line. You can go back and look it up. Just Google Rosenstein red line. And you'll find a plethora of articles. This guy used to be the left's gatekeeper. He was going to make sure that they got rid of Trump. And now that that hasn't happened, James Comey is going around criticizing Rod Rosenstein's soul. Now, listen to this. Recently, Rosenstein was speaking in Baltimore, and he gave a speech about James Comey. Listen to this, because I found this very interesting. James Comey is supposed to be a Boy Scout. Joe, go ahead and cue this up. This is Rod Rosenstein speaking at the Great Baltimore Committee yesterday evening. So last night, he discussed several topics, but this little section right here is interesting to me. Listen.
The FBI director had announced at a public hearing that there was a counterintelligence investigation involving the president's campaign that might result in criminal charges. Then he was fired abruptly, confusing explanations were provided, and troubling allegations were leaked. As a result, critics were arguing that the FBI director's removal was part of an effort to derail the investigation of Russian efforts to influence the 2016 election. I was responsible for that investigation. I was overseeing it. I knew from my briefings with the agents and prosecutors that it was a very important investigation. If it was not done correctly, there would always be lingering doubts about the scope of Russian efforts and about the extent of American involvement. I would never have allowed anyone to interfere with that investigation. I had been in the Department of Justice for over a quarter century. Although I was relatively new to the job, I knew how to manage criminal investigations. The special counsel's report states that the President's counsel advised me on Monday afternoon that the President had decided to remove the director. It was news to me. Nobody said that the removal was intended to influence the course of the investigation. Later on Monday, the President showed me a letter detailing his reasons. Then he told me to deliver a memorandum to the Attorney General with my concerns about the director's conduct the following morning. He did not tell me what reasons to put in my memo. Now, the special counsel's report states that the President asked me to mention in my memo that the FBI director had told him that he was not under investigation, the same language that ultimately appeared in the President's public letter. I didn't include it in my memo because, number one, I had no personal knowledge of what the director had said to the President, and number two, in any event, it was not relevant to my memo. That's important for you to know that I did not dislike the FBI director. On the contrary, at the time I admired him personally.
At the time.
And I appreciated many of his accomplishments at the FBI. And I would be the last one to condemn anyone for a judgment call.
This used to be
These jobs are difficult.
the left's
They require
gatekeepers,
choices
so
that
they
invite
thought.
criticism. But while there are many issues in our line of work in which a range of decisions may be reasonable, there are bright lines that should not be crossed. The clearest mistake was the director's decision to hold a press conference about an open case, to reveal his personal recommendation about the case, and to discuss details about the investigation without the informed consent of the prosecutors and the Attorney General, because one of the fundamental principles of federal law enforcement is that the agents investigate the cases and the prosecutorial decisions are made by federal prosecutors and by politically accountable officials in the Department of Justice. The director then chose to send a letter to Congress on the eve of the election, stating that one of the presidential candidates was under criminal investigation, expecting that letter to be released immediately to the public. Now, those actions, in my view, were not within the realm of reasonable decisions.
I wonder if CNN would be
They were
interested to air any
inconsistent
of
with
this.
our goal of communicating to all FBI employees that they should respect the role of the Attorney General of the United States, that they should refrain from disclosing information about criminal investigations, they should avoid disparaging uncharged persons, and above all, they should never take any unnecessary steps that could be perceived to influence an election.
Yeah.
But the director doubled down in his congressional
release
testimony. In
classified.
essence, he said that he would do it again if he had the chance. Now, if I had been asked to make a recommendation before the removal decision was made, I would have included a more balanced analysis of the pros and cons. But my brief memo to the Attorney General was correct, and it was reasonable under the circumstances. If I had been the decision maker, the removal would have been handled differently, with far more respect and far less drama.
Yeah, but President
So I
Trump
do not
really
blame the
knows who
former
James
director for
Comey
being
is.
angry. I would be too, if I were in his shoes. But now the former director seems to be acting as a partisan pundit, selling books and earning speaking fees while speculating about the strength of my character and the fate of my immortal soul. I kid you not. That is disappointing. Speculating about souls is not a job for police and prosecutors. Generally, we base our opinions on eyewitness testimony. In any event, I agreed with the then acting FBI director, who testified that the firing would not impact the investigation.
That's Rod Rosenstein last night. Rod Rosenstein. Anyway, used to be the left's boy. You know what I mean? Like, he's going to take care of this. And now that he didn't, now that he looked at the evidence and oversaw the investigation of Robert Mueller, or of Trump, the campaign Russia collusion that was done by the special counsel Robert Mueller, I just wonder, do they want to interview James Comey right now, because James Comey's afraid he's about to get arrested, period. 100%. James Comey's afraid he's going to get charged with something, and that's why he's going around all these TV networks trying to sway public opinion. I wonder if CNN or any of these liberal outlets would be interested to interview Rod Rosenstein and ask him some questions. But Comey is now questioning. You can go look it up. He's actually going and questioning the character of Rod Rosenstein, his soul, and everything else. And of course, I mean, I questioned it too. I assumed that this guy was working deliberately, unfairly against the president. And he may have been at one time. I will tell you this. He kind of looked like a prisoner at that press conference standing behind William Barr. Some people think that, Rod Rosenstein's signature is going to be on, some of these documents from back in the day, from back in the Obama administration. I don't know, but we'll wait and see. But as of right now, it is certainly interesting to see how Rosenstein was in the left camp, according to the left. And they respected him, and they said that he can't be fired, and they boosted his credibility. And now the Russia hoax has got to continue to give them a chance, I guess, at the 2020 elections. We're going to take a break. We're going to reset. We're going to tell you about an odd Chips Ahoy ad campaign when we come back. Don't go, yeah, that's right, the cookies. Why are we talking about cookies? I'll tell you here in a minute.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Folks, so we do these things called Impression of the Session, and we're going to continue those segments right now. Please welcome back to the program. We've got State Representative Grant Hodges is with us. He represents District 96. Grant, how are you this morning?
Good morning, Paul. Well, I'm a little worried I'm going to get turned into a meme, but other than that, I'm doing well, and good to be back on with you.
Absolutely. It's always great to have you on, and let's just start, generally, let's give you the floor. State Representative Grant Hodges, what was your impression of the session in 2019?
Well, I appreciate you having me on to talk about the session. Really my feeling is after my 3 sessions, unfortunately, I think this was probably my least favorite one. I was a little bit disappointed with this.
In a world full of constituents with social media accounts, bloggers just looking to increase their page views, and a talk radio host who generally is just the worst, how are Little Rock's elite supposed to conduct business with such a lack of privacy? Introducing the 1835 Club, older and more refined than other clubs that claim discretion. The 1835 Club is for seasoned political veterans that want to conduct the highest form of aristocratic business with the public's money. Are you a schemer? Do you someday want a guaranteed flow of taxpayer money to support your business? Is it your dream to see the .gov domain at the end of your business website? Don't listen to the imitators. The 1835 Club is the place where corrupt politicians and businessmen hatch their next crony schemes. At the 1835 Club, we make lobbying safe and legal. Ethics. Why, of course. All business is done in an ethical manner. Just look for the sign above the door that reads, loophole. Are you tired of the Capitol Police restricting your access to the roof after a perfectly good night of drinking? The 1835 Club has libations and a perfectly good roof. Other crony clubs that promise discretion try to lure you in by advertising bars made out of aeroplanes. Well, at the 1835 Club, instead of an airplane fuselage, we've got a space shuttle. No, not a bar. We've got an actual space shuttle that makes a daily run to the moon so members of the 1835 Club can have some real privacy away from the bloggers and taxpayers. Are you an Arkansas aristocrat? Do you want to be? It's the 1835 Club, and we work tirelessly to make sure the good old boy system remains alive and well. Join today.
Disclaimer. The 1835 Club reserves the right to deny membership to anyone who has principles. Any talk of the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution must be done in jest or, at the very least, with a condescending tone. And finally, the 1835 Club will be given a 25% commission of any agreements made between politicians and the business community.
PHP Parody. Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, again, we'll be talking to Sally C. Pipes coming up at 7:05. Then we've got State Representative Joe Cloud coming up at 7:33. So we've got a great rest of the show for you. We want you to stick around for it. Chips Ahoy. Chips Ahoy. I don't understand this. I don't know why this would happen. Chips Ahoy decided to retweet on Mother's Day.
They didn't retweet, they shared. This is embedded in the tweet.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. Chips Ahoy decided to craft an original tweet where they put in a video of a drag queen wishing people happy Mother's Day while surrounded with Chips Ahoy cookies. And it sounded like this, and those of you watching, I'm sorry.
Mother's Day, and I am so thankful to have a mother like mine who supports me through all my craziness and loves on me and buys me Chips Ahoy cookies, Chewy, the original, everything under the sun. My mom knows I love my cookies, so get those cookies. And what's a sweet gesture for you to do to your mama, your real mama, your drag mama, whichever mama, somebody, whoever take care of you, whoever you feel or consider your mama? It's the day today. Get them a cookie, or two, a pack. Buy them all the Chips Ahoys in the world. I don't know. Or get some milk. Get her some milk, too. You can't buy the cookie without some milk, honey. Get those cookies. It's Mother's Day. It's time to celebrate, love, all that. Cookies, get them. And if you don't, how you going to celebrate Mother's Day? It's the new chocolates.
Was that Keegan-Michael Key in drag? He sounds just like Keegan-Michael Key. Yeah, so, or you could just sell cookies. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but, I mean, do you want a Chips Ahoy cookie about right now?
No.
For those of you who don't know, I mean, this is a drag queen who has worked on her highlight and shadow technique. And you women out there know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the application of makeup, right? Highlight and shadow, and she looks like a white girl, right? I mean, it's interesting. I know, right? Like I don't mean this. I'm just like, well, I don't buy a lot of cookies anyway. But that is just, I mean, and look what Steven Crowder, scroll down, look what Steven Crowder posted. He posted the Seinfeld meme. Of look what Steven Crowder posted. Oh, I like it. Show everybody. This just so this is Steven Crowder, the great Steven Crowder. That's the first response too, by the way. Anyway, it's pretty strange. When we come back, let's talk a little bit about this whiteboard. Well, it's not a whiteboard, but let's talk about this graphic. Are you running? What do I mean by that? Well, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory, but I'll give you a little context to the motivation behind asking you the question, the audience out there, are you running? When we come back.
Session overall, and the reason being when I kind of look back and thought, what were some of the big conservative wins of the session? I didn't see a lot there. We didn't get anything meaningful done really on school choice, and I'm on the education committee, so that's something I've watched 3 sessions in a row be defeated. I didn't see anything on tort reform, really nothing significant on Medicaid reform, nothing on ethics reform, which was really disappointing. I had a bill that I really wanted to pass with Senator Johnson for the pension issue for corrupt officials. Sort of a big picture landscape. I felt like taxes and spending went up. Didn't see a lot of efforts there to go in the opposite direction. And then, of course, there were a few bills that I felt were good that didn't pass, like Representative Payton's car tax bill or Representative Gonzalez's telemedicine bill. So, big picture, I was a little bit disappointed with this session. It wasn't all bad, of course, but we didn't go nearly far enough, in my opinion.
Yeah, it seems like on the tax side of things, we had a situation where it seems like leadership was convinced that changing the structure of the tax system was better than letting the people keep more of their money. And what I mean by that is, feel free to answer this. You think when it's all said and done, the people of Arkansas are going to be paying more money to the government than they were before the 92nd General Assembly?
Yes, I do. And I would be interested to have someone give me the opposite case. But from my perspective, it definitely seems like taxes at the end of the day will be going up, certainly because, as you've talked about already, a lot of these tax increases take effect soon this year, and a lot of our tax cuts take effect in the future. Hopefully they'll take effect in the future. But when you look at it with the highway tax vote, the highway taxes we just implemented, the online sales tax, the tobacco tax, and what we did with the cell phone fees. At the end of the day, I just don't see how, even with the income taxes that we've passed the last 3 sessions, I'm afraid that your average Arkansan is going to be paying more, and I'm worried that they're going to be really disappointed and feel disenfranchised, disencouraged, because the messaging is, we have this Republican supermajority, taxes are being cut, but at the end of the day, I think a lot of people are going to be looking at their bank accounts at the end of the year and wondering why they're not seeing it.
Yeah. You mentioned, we have done the income tax. Yeah.
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
So, in case you haven't noticed, in Arkansas politicos know this, but right now we're kind of entering the season where your politicians at the state level, as well as on down, are starting to announce their intentions. Are they going to seek another term for, to serve the people? Are they not going to seek another term? Then that's going to open stuff up if somebody were to do that. We saw recently that Arkansas State Senator John Cooper has announced his intent to seek re-election. We know that State Representative Dan Sullivan has announced that, he will be seeking that same seat, that Senate seat, in a Republican primary. Then you have, I think I saw State Representative Sarah Capp on Facebook. She said that she was, seeking another term for her seat. So this is what's happening. People are making these announcements and deciding what to do. And so all I'm telling, just a lot of you out there, if you're not in office, you probably don't even know that. And so I wanted to just tell everybody this week that this is the time to be making those decisions. And many of you out there might make great, principled, conservative lawmakers or dog catchers, for that matter. I mean, who cares? So my question to you is, are you running? And many of you say, well, many of us, most of us are going to say, maybe someday, or that's just not me, or I can't afford to, I don't know where I'd get the money, or that sort of thing. Okay, those are all common concerns. I think but there's some of you out there that haven't even considered it. And so I would encourage you to consider it at all levels of government, because you never know. You never know when this one office somewhere in some county or city that no one's ever heard of might be able to be used in a very significant way. So maybe consider going into public service. Understanding, especially if you are, a frequent listener of Conduit News, understanding that even though we have this great system where we get to decide democratically who's going to represent us in our constitutional republic, and that's really, really a good thing. Understanding, though, that even in that system, the people who are going to want to control other people using the government, based on our human nature, there's going to be more of the people who can't create, and so they want to use the force of government to enrich themselves, that are going to put their name on that ballot, than those people who don't have those tendencies. Do you follow me? Do you understand what I'm saying? What I'm saying is, even though we have what we think is, as far as man-made structures of government, how we're going to govern ourselves, America has got a great idea, a great system, because it really does count on the fallen nature of man to try to use government to enforce their will over somebody else that they couldn't do otherwise. And that's why you have a limited government. Ideally, you have checks and balances. You have individual rights that are from God, not government, and the government is there to protect those individual rights. You can't usurp those rights. I mean, that's all in there. But even in that system, and I think history, just it's a self-evident truth that even in that system, those that run for office and win typically are the ones who are more attracted to the power of it in the first place. So my question again is, are you running? Now, my second question would be, if you're not running, what are you doing to help someone who is? That's my second question. Now, the easiest way, the most obvious answer is, are you going to donate to someone's campaign? Because the fact of the matter is, if you don't have money, it is very difficult to win. Matter of fact, it's pretty much impossible to win if you don't have money. So are you donating to somebody who is? Are you volunteering for that person? Are you attempting, you're saying I'll go knock doors for you, or I'll, try to help you get organized, or whatever the case may be. And obviously my agenda here is a conservative one, so that's my bias, but you people out there know, your friends, your neighbors, everyone in your sphere of influence, you know who would be a good candidate. You know who would be a good public servant, somebody that you could trust. Or, nobody has nobody knows for sure, but you have a good idea, you have a good feeling about it. So what are you doing to help someone who is running or should run? I think in the most idealistic situation, we would all like for those that run for office do so because they were pressured and almost shamed for not running for office. There are some people that say that's how things used to work. Back before there wasn't as many of us who are tempted by the idea of the office and the power that you get from it. There were people in a community sitting around in a coffee shop or a pub, and they were saying, we really need someone to represent. What about, what's his face up the street? He's got a strong family. He's, a successful, respectful, honorable in his business. Let's go ask him to run. Now, and I'm not talking about the hospitals and the CEOs, and those people are still doing that. I don't think that they necessarily, they may not be saying, oh yeah, he's honorable, as much as he'll vote the way we want him to vote on issues that affect our interests. Now, that stuff still happens all the time. Now, I'm talking about before the special interest had risen to such a degree. I wonder if you can chart the rise of, and look, that's part of it. There's nothing illegal about lobbying for your interest. That's just part of it. That's always going to happen. But wouldn't that be great if most of our candidates for office were there because a bunch of people, and I mean a groundswell of people, were like, you have to do this or you're a bad person. Don't let us down. Don't let us down. You know, it's kind of you go back and listen to that, you got the Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, mentality. That movie, man, you go back and watch that movie. It is fantastic, especially that scene where you have Mr. Smith's, the senior senator there just leveling with him. Like, you got to play ball. I really don't work for the people of the state. I work for this guy that put me in office. Washington, D.C., by the way, hated that movie when it came out, but the people loved it. Telephone number 870-275-9799. So the question is, are you running? Let me know what you think. 870-275-9799. Sound off on YouTube or Facebook. Okay. So, I can't believe this. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you an actual member of the United States Congress. That's right. An actual member of the United States Congress. This is what she, can you say that? Sounds like. Take a listen.
People try like pointing out all your insecurities
start from
and
the
stuff. Like,
you may have to.
Don't you love when you go to like the nail salon or you go wherever and people try like pointing out all your insecurities and stuff? Like, I just went to the nail salon, okay? Just so I can feel human, nothing special, just trying to get some paint, cut my cuticles, whatever.
Cut those cuticles.
And I'm sitting there and I'm painting my nails, my nails are getting painted, and the woman's like, your eyebrows are too big for your face.
Whoa.
And I'm sitting there, I'm like, and she's like, mustache? And I'm like, ah! I'm like, first of all,
really? Tell us about it.
I thought I came here to feel good about myself. Second of all, what if I like my mustache? You ever think about that?
That is a member of Congress. Her name is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Oh, my gosh. Well, it's going to be like to all you people out there that are tempted by the power and the idea, so you're telling me there's a chance. You watch that video, you're like, I could never be a member of Congress. I mean, I would really love to, but I just, I'm not quite, I'm not the best and the brightest. Watch that video, and you're thinking, so you're telling me there's a chance. Oh, man. A member of Congress, ladies and gentlemen. It's, there is a reason. There's a reason James Madison wrote in the Federalist Papers. Was it Madison or Hamilton? I don't know which one. Which Federalist paper talks about the House is naturally going to be more populist. And that's why you have elections every 2 years. The Senate's supposed to be more deliberative. But yeah, there's certainly some sort of populist wave going on. We'll see if the people of New York want to keep that going for the next 2 years. Speaking of Ocasio-Cortez, coming up at 7:05, we'll be talking with Sally C. Pipes from the Pacific Research Institute. Her latest piece is on Ocasio-Cortez. Headline, yes, Representative Ocasio-Cortez, the VA is badly broken. Sally C. Pipes, again, we're going to be talking with her at 7:05 coming up. Congressman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez recently offered a vigorous defense of the Veterans Health Administration, arguing that its problems were a myth peddled by Republicans who want to privatize the system. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, she said. Really? One of her fellow Democrats would beg to differ. and he has a relevant perspective given that he's actually received care through the VA. Quote, the VA is broken, Representative Seth Moulton, Democrat in Massachusetts, said in an interview with CNN's Jake Tapper. When people show up at the VA and can't even get seen for months, when I get sent home with the wrong medications after having minor surgery, I mean, that is not a good healthcare system, end quote. Ocasio-Cortez, she writes, has no choice but to defend the VA because it's the brand of socialized medicine she'd like to impose on the entire country. But the VA stands out as a case study in what's wrong with single-payer health care. The VA has been broken for years. Consider a massive scandal at the Phoenix VA. In 2014, staffers created 2 lists of veterans, one that included patients who received timely care and another with patients who had been waiting for months. To avoid criticism, they only shared the former list with Washington officials and kept the latter list secret, which had up to 1,600 veterans in secret. Why? Because the mission of the bureaucracy changes from that of taking care of our soldiers to ensuring the bureaucracy itself exists, just to exist. And we see this in all levels of our government today. And it's a shame, especially when we're talking about the VA. Now, I will tell you this. I know a veteran who was in Vietnam, and has hearing problems, was firing one of those giant guns, and anyway, he goes to the VA, and he says there's a remarkable difference in the Memphis VA before Obama versus after Obama, meaning in the Trump era. He says the service has improved 100%. The cleanliness of the facility has improved 100%. The staff greets you. They smile. They talk to you. They actually care. Again, this according to a veteran, a Vietnam veteran I was talking with who goes to the VA over in Memphis. So there are some... as a matter of fact, even Jon Stewart, was it Jon Stewart, the former Daily Show, big liberal guy, said that the VA has been improving processing claims and stuff under the Trump administration, because that's one of his big issues. But he was just urging, it gets better, but they have seen a vast improvement. So that's a big deal as well. All right, folks. So yesterday I told you about a sex strike that Alyssa Milano instituted because of the abortion law, or the anti-abortion law, the 6-week abortion ban law, the heartbeat bill out of Georgia. And I made the obvious point, and I saw other people writing this on Facebook after the show, that's great. We got liberal women saying that they're in a sex strike because they want to have abortions, but now they can't take the risk of pregnancy because of Georgia. Okay, so that means there's going to be less abortions then. So win one for the conservatives. I mean, I'd like to say that there's some sort of, 5-level psychological manipulation on our part, but it certainly is not.
No, this is all them.
It's not like we're like, yes, excellent. If we'll pass this abortion bill, they'll take a sex strike, and that's how we'll get what we want, saving the lives of children. No, that's not it at all. This is just their Trump derangement syndrome on full display. So now we have the Westworld star, Evan Rachel. That star is a relative term, but the Daily Wire reports that Westworld starts an HBO show. Her reaction to the Georgia abortion law is that men should get mandatory vasectomies. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Mandatory, because they say it's tit for tat. Well, you're going to regulate my body. Well, I'm going to regulate your body. Now, that's different. Again, if we were forcing people to have abortions, then maybe you'd have a point, but we're not. Versus forcing somebody to have a vasectomy. So this is by the way, Paul Boyce. Looking to outdo Alyssa Milano in the offerings of Crazy and Stupid, Westworld actress Evan Rachel Wood has called for men to get mandatory vasectomies in response to Georgia passing a fetal heartbeat bill that would forbid doctors from performing abortions once a baby's heartbeat is detected in the mother's womb. By the way, Arkansas has a law like this already. So yeah, and this is where it gets really frustrating because she got some pushback to it, and listen to this. According to Page 6, Wood followed up her silly suggestion on Friday by clarifying she would only have those mandatory vasectomies as a means to prove a point about legislating what people will or will not do with their bodies. I don't want mandatory. Well, see, it's just because you don't think that a scientific fact is a scientific fact, that there's another life in there. There's another body in there. It's a dangerous, slippery slope. I use the example to point out the hypocrisy of always putting the responsibility, punishment, blame, or means of prevention solely on women. Oh, by the way, Alyssa Milano's proving that point, by the way, that it is that it is solely on women, because she's saying, well, I don't want to get pregnant, so I'm going to abstain from sex. More on that in just a moment. More on that in a moment. Later, as social media users began to push back against Wood's craziness, she asked that people not judge her for those opinions. Quote, "Dear everyone, God, whatever that means to you, loves you no matter what. Yes, even if you have an abortion, because God is everything. To say God is not," which, again, this is a straw man, to say God is not is to say there is something God isn't, therefore not all-powerful. We don't know God's plan, so don't judge.
My word.
So many conflicting theological statements in there. But we don't have the time. We don't have the time, right? Okay. Evan Rachel Wood has expressed extreme political views before. Okay. All right. So, just wanted to bring you that's the latest on what these leftist women are doing. Now, as a follow-up to Alyssa Milano, there's a great piece at the Daily Wire as well by Michael Knowles. And he goes through the top 7 reasons why Alyssa Milano's sex strike doesn't make any sense. And they're really, really good. Some of my original points from yesterday, obviously. Number 1, in order to pressure pro-lifers into repealing abortion restrictions, the sex strike calls on women to practice chastity, thereby reducing the number of overall abortions. Okay, number 1. Number 2, the sex strike compels women who support abortion but would not procure one themselves to stop having sex, thereby reducing the number of parents with children they might teach to support murdering kids. Number 3, conservative men still get to sleep with their conservative wives. So, I mean, we're good, all right? We check that box, and thank you, Lord. Number 4, if women uniformly supported abortion, they wouldn't need to deprive men of sex to change the laws. They could just simply vote, because there's more women than there are men, but you can't do that. And so it's also kind of pointing out that not all women agree with the concept of murdering children or sacrificing them for convenience. Number 5, the strike proposes to give women control over their own bodies by telling women what to do with their own bodies. We analyzed that bit of hypocrisy or irony, I guess, yesterday. Number 6, the sex strike presumes straight monogamous sex to be the norm. This strike only works if men desire sex from women. So how do lesbians fit into the sex strike? Not very progressive, Alyssa. How about gay men? Not only does Milano ignore the existence of more imaginative sexual preferences, she also assumes categorically that women support abortion and men oppose it, neither of which are true. Michael Knowles goes on. Number 7, the last top, this is the best one. Proponents of women's sexual liberation now admit that casual sex serves primarily to pleasure men. Traditional moral views place the conception of a child at the heart of the sexual act. With the advent of mass-produced contraception and legal abortion, pleasure supplanted procreation as the primary purpose of sex. The sex strike takes this shift to its logical conclusion by observing that men receive greater physical pleasure from sex than women, and women risk far more by engaging in casual sex than men. Alyssa Milano would be hard-pressed to find a social conservative who disagrees. Milano's sex strike has struggled to get off the ground, even among her ideological fellow travelers. The writer Christy Coulter protested, "Living under patriarchy has already robbed me of safety, autonomy, opportunities, and trust in our institutions. Now I'm supposed to give up sex, too, and play into the fiction that it's just a bargaining chip / transaction for women? Love you, but nope." And then it goes on and on and on. Those are the top 7 reasons, again, by Michael Knows, thedailywire.com, why Alyssa Milano's sex strike doesn't make any sense. Tell me what you think. Facebook.com/Conduit News. Sound off in the comments. Back in a moment.
Are you a conservative-minded young person and want to let the world know about it? Are you tired of rolling your eyes as your professor regurgitates progressive, PC, neo-Marxist nonsense? Then you should interview on Conduit News Radio's Young Conservative segment and tell us about why you believe the way you do. Tell us how you came to be a conservative and what are your views on government. Now, if you're worried that your neo-Marxist professor may also be a right-wing talk radio listening masochist, then names can be changed to protect the innocent. It's the Conduit News Radio Conservative Future segment. To be interviewed, call 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
The governor and the leadership, I think, did a really good job getting the income tax cut, moving that top rate eventually from 6.9 to 5.9. That's great. And but then they come right back, and not only do they take that $95 million cut to the government back by the gas tax increase, which you voted against, they also with the other vote with the to continue the levy on the half-cent sales tax, which you voted against as well, State Representative Hodges. With those two votes, not only did you wipe away the $95 million tax cut, but you wiped away all of the previous income taxes, for the last 3 sessions, and then some, because we're talking about $400 million.
That's right.
Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Yeah, we've got some people on Facebook that are saying this. This is on the sound off about the top 7 reasons why the sex strike doesn't make any sense. Woody on a Facebook page says, "This is our enemies turning on themselves. Never disturb them as they self-destruct." All these conservatives, seriously, because they're giving you what you want, which means less abortions. So it's just like, okay, shh, everyone should be quiet. They're going on a sex strike. Liberal women are going on a sex strike, which means less unwanted pregnancies and it means less abortions. Everyone just quietly back away and exit the room. We've got one more hour coming your way next. Don't go anywhere, folks.
The news and talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
Yeah, that's a big reason why I voted against the highway tax bill. And I think people just can't afford it. And we're already a high tax state. We already have the highest income tax in the region. We have, I think, the second highest sales tax in the country after Tennessee, which has no income tax. So, I don't think enough is being done. And there's this mentality in Little Rock, and I know you've seen it and other legislators have mentioned it, that, any time we do a tax cut, it has to be paired with a tax increase. We've just seen that time and time again. Anytime we have a tax cut proposal, it's always tied to, well, how are you going to increase revenue elsewhere to offset this? And meanwhile, tax collections keep going up and up and up. I think we had a record April as far as tax collections to the state. But you're right, I did vote against the highway tax, and I hope that the voters will do that with the extension vote in 2020. They were told it would be a 10-year program, and now, of course, we're trying to make that permanent. It's I think I would have loved to have seen more debate on those highway votes. I know Representative Mayberry had a bill that would have not raised taxes but still given us funding for highways. I know there were other proposals out there. I know Representative Penzo and Representative Lundstrom had ideas, but really we weren't given the opportunity to really debate those or hear those. It was just sort of my way or the highway.
I like it.
Sorry about that.
No. I really appreciate it. So tell me, if you don't mind, like the last one of the last, and there's a ton of bills that you guys voted on, and I have been focusing on these three: the gas tax, the half-cent sales tax, and then the internet tax. Now, so tell me, this was a tough one because the internet tax was paired with these corporate tax cuts eventually. Mm-hmm. So what was your thinking on that, State Representative Hodges?
Yeah, it was tough, and of course, so I did think the bill did a lot of really good things on the corporate side, so I liked that a lot. Now, of course, we did have the online sales tax tied into it, and like I was just talking about, that's how a lot of these bills get to us on the floor, and I'm not a member of the Revenue and Tax Committee, so, I really only have my floor vote on these things, and we keep seeing it every session. I think it was last session we had the veterans income tax cut tied with the increase in a bunch of other taxes, and so we kind of get put in these very tough to win positions. But on the online sales tax, I felt comfortable enough at this point with the Supreme Court having ruled on that issue, and I have heard a lot back in my district and in Northwest Arkansas, not just from chamber types who are always kind of in favor of these kind of things, but really from business owners in Northwest Arkansas who are telling me, I've got customers that come in and they look at my clothes, they look at jewelry, they look at my furniture, and then they try it out, then they leave and go buy it online. And so I'd heard enough of that I felt like with sales moving increasingly online, that we needed to do something in regards to the sales tax between retail and online.
Yeah. Well, and I definitely understand those arguments. And that would have to be really frustrating if you're a business owner and people are coming in there to, touch and feel, and then it's like, okay, bye. And we go buy it online. Mm-hmm. We're talking with State Representative Grant Hodges. He represents District 96. Can you remind us, Grant, real quick, District 96 is where?
Yep, District 96 is East Benton County, so I get Rogers, Lowell, Avoca, Garfield, Gateway. It's mostly the Beaver Lake area, downtown Rogers, and I live in Rogers.
Okay, so I thought one of the best moments, when I say best, just you did such a good job when the Arkansas Works ruling came down that the Arkansas Works was basically illegal, or the work requirements were considered illegal by the judge. This is being challenged. Then you guys were asked to vote for the budget, and you went down and gave a really good speech. just basically about what you guys had been told in the past. And, I mean, just go ahead and feel free to elaborate on that moment in the session.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the program. We've got a special treat for you on the line this morning. Please welcome to the program, we have Sally C. Pipes. She is the president and CEO of the Pacific Research Institute. Sally, welcome to Conduit News this morning.
Well, thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely. Now, obviously, I know a lot of people have probably read your books out there. They probably saw you a couple of weeks ago on Mark Levin's show on Fox News, where you did an excellent job talking about the dangers of socialized medicine. But if there's people out there that don't know about your work, can you kind of tell us how you got started and why socialized medicine is a bad thing?
Right. Well, I'm originally Canadian. I grew up in Canada. All my family is still in Canada. And the government fully controls the healthcare system. Private coverage is totally outlawed in Canada for anything considered medically necessary. And so I've been working at the Fraser Institute as an economist, working, in the late 80s, we realized that waiting lists were starting to develop. And so we wanted to be able to monitor them and see what was happening. And so in the early 90s at Fraser, we published a document called Waiting Your Turn, A Guide to Waiting Lists, and it's published annually. And in Canada today, the average wait from seeing a primary care doctor to getting treatment by a specialist is 19.8 weeks. So that's almost 5 months. Back in 1993, it was only 9.3 weeks. Then in the fall of 1991, I got the opportunity to move to the States and to run the Pacific Research Institute based in San Francisco. Not exactly a bastion of free market ideas, but and then, of course, we had an initiative on the ballot for single payer in California, which I worked hard to defeat. And then we had Hillary Care, we've had Obamacare, and now Bernie Sanders, Bernie Care, Pramila Jayapal Care. So I'm fighting very hard to educate Americans on why this would be a disaster for their health if the government fully took over the system and banned all private coverage.
Is it something that once it takes hold, it's just like any other government program as well? Once people become accustomed to getting something for free, it's very difficult to take away, right?
Well, exactly. And Milton Friedman, my mentor, who wrote the foreword to my first book, the Nobel laureate, of course, in economics, he used to always say, find me a government program that has actually been eliminated. I think we found one or two, the Mohair Subsidy Act and maybe one or two others, but very, very difficult. Even when these programs are not working, people think something is free and they just don't want it to be taken away from them. And so it's very much, a disaster. And of course, it's not free. Bernie Sanders' latest Senate bill that came out in April, that he released in April, $32 to $38 trillion over 10 years. Canadians, of course, people here think their health care is free, but the average Canadian family pays $13,000 a year in hidden taxes for a program where they have to wait almost 5 months. 1 million Canadians are on a waiting list trying to get treatment. And, it's not free, and you have care is rationed and the long wait.
Wow, $13,000 and hidden taxes. This is interesting. So this is Conduit News Radio. We are an Arkansas-based, news program, and here in Arkansas, a couple years back, we expanded Medicaid under Obamacare, and we did it in a hybrid way. I say we, not me, the politicians,
the government.
The government, and instead of just doing the traditional expansion, they decided to do a quote private option where they gave a bunch of money every month to Blue Cross Blue Shield in the form of insurance policy. So right now we're paying $600 a month per person for 250, 300,000 people, regardless of whether or not they go to the doctor a month, to, like a company like Blue Cross Blue Shield. And, to your point about, it not never going away, it doesn't matter how unsustainable, or it doesn't matter how many bad results that we're getting. We're kind of told, no, we need to, let's try to add work requirements now. Let's try to make the thing more conservative. And hidden taxes, they just got through raising taxes on a bunch, gasoline and sales taxes, and it's to pay for this, in my opinion. I don't think they want to admit it, but it's just kind of the way this whole process is playing out. And that's why I'm so grateful that there's a voice like yours, Sally, who's out there saying, no, we don't need to let them get in the foot in the door. You mentioned Milton Friedman. Ronald Reagan also said they will use medicine to get their foot in the door to get socialism everywhere.
Right, exactly. And when you look at Senator Bernie Sanders, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the new House member from New York, Pramila Jayapal, the House member from Washington State, her bill, which she released, is even more comprehensive than Senator Sanders' bill, because she wants her whole single-payer program to be implemented within 2 years. Bernie Sanders' plan is 4 years. But these plans are more comprehensive than Canada's, because they add dental care, vision care, free drugs, free long-term care. The Canadian government can't even afford to add those. So if this happens in the States, as you say, we won't get rid of it. And by the time people realize they don't have access to a doctor, a lot of doctors will retire early. They already have under Obamacare, and the American Association of Medical Colleges has predicted by 2030 there will be a shortage of about 125,000 doctors in this country. And worse yet, I think the best and brightest kids are not going to go into medicine when they realize they would be civil servants, and salaries for docs will be paid 40% below what doctors get paid today for treating private patients, because Sanders et al. Want doctors to be paid Medicare rates. And so this is going to destroy the whole doctor-patient relationship.
Yeah, and there's this whole idea that if healthcare is a right, then we're born into this world enslaved to somebody else's, healthcare costs. Then in turn, you have the idea, a doctor is the best and brightest. Typically, they go to school, they put in the work, they put in the hour. I'm not entitled to the information in their heads. I'm not entitled for them to have to give me something for quote, free to treat me. That's just, to me, I have a huge problem with that. But I don't think the average person, I don't know if they think that deeply, Sally, and that's an issue in and of itself.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think that this whole idea of an entitlement society has been sort of brewing since Bernie Sanders was running against Hillary Clinton back in 2016, and he really wants America to be a society where everybody is beholden to the government. Mm-hmm. But as you know, government doesn't have any money. All the money that government has comes from us, the taxpayers, and it's not an efficient system. And America is an entrepreneurial country, and we want to keep it that way. If you want to, be beholden to government, well, move to Canada or move to the United Kingdom. The National Health Service, their version of single payer, is turning 71 this year. Long waits. There are, over 230,000 Brits are having to wait over 6 months to get an appointment. They're trying to buy doctors back from the European community because there's such a shortage of doctors. There's a shortage of 12,000 doctors in the UK. All of these things are just tantamount to what a single-payer government-run program will be, and it's not for America.
So you have I think a bi-weekly column over at Forbes, Piping Up. We're talking with Sally C. Pipes. I appreciate the pun there. So Piping Up, and your latest article, yes, Representative Ocasio-Cortez, the VA is badly broken. So the VA is a good example of what we wouldn't want, we wouldn't want that to be the standard for health care in America, right?
Well, I was debating Uwe Reinhardt, a professor of economics at Princeton, who unfortunately passed away about a year ago. But when I was doing this international debate, Professor Reinhardt interrupted me and said, I was talking about the perils of single payer, and he interrupted me and said, we have an example of a single payer system in this country. And I said, well, what is that, Ubi? And he said, the VA. Now, this is probably a year or two before all the terrible stories about the Veterans Administration and the long waiting lists and the lack of access to care actually started to come out. But Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, her latest thing, in addition to supporting Bernie on Medicare for all, she now is supporting the idea of the VA for all. And she is saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Well, a Democratic House member from Massachusetts, Mr. Seth Moulton, came out and said, I am a vet, and I am on the VA system, and it is not working for us. We do not want the VA system for all of America because it has fraud, it has waiting times, it has lack of access to the latest care, and a lot of vets have to drive many, many hours to get treatment, and as I say, they have to wait. So this is not a solution, and people need to just read the papers and listen to the radio to hear how our vets are so badly treated in terms of their health care.
I think you're exactly right, and I've heard from some vets that from one administration to the next, there are some veteran clinics that have improved, according to them, according to a veteran I know specifically. Since President Trump has taken over, I think he's trying to do the best he can for our veterans. But it still is an example of how people can just get lost. They can fall between the cracks, and as far as the bureaucracy goes, it becomes more about the existence of the bureaucracy itself and not the people that the bureaucracy exists to serve. And so that's a really, I'm really glad that you're bringing this issue up. Can you tell us about your latest book, Sally, and what you hope to accomplish with your latest book, the False Promise?
Yes, The False Promise of Single Payer Healthcare was been published by Encounter Books. It's available on Amazon, and it's a small booklet which is designed to help American people understand what single payer really is. The latest Kaiser poll showed that 56% of Americans like the idea of single payer healthcare, and when you say healthcare should also be a right, that support goes up to 71%. But when you say to the American people, well, what is your support for it? If it means higher taxes and it means you'll lose your employer-based coverage, which 180 million Americans today have, and polling shows they like it, well, then the support goes down to 37%. People don't understand single payer means all private coverage is banned. So I want people to know what it means for them and their health. I have a new book which will be out in January 2020. It's a larger book from Encounter called False Premise, False Promise, The Disastrous Realities of Single-Payer Healthcare. Because I have to educate Americans, because people like Bernie Sanders have the mainstream media in their pocket, and they have so many opportunities to say, hey, this will be free, everyone will have the best, and people buy into it without really looking behind the glass wall. So these are, my objectives are to educate people and explain what it would mean for them and their health.
Last question. Healthcare does continue to go up. I mean, that's one of the reasons the left says they have to get the government involved to make it free or more affordable or what have you. What are your thoughts on what could be done to put the free market more at work or to lower prices to where we get the real price on some of this stuff?
Well, exactly. I mean, I have another book called The Cure for Obamacare. But really, the whole thing is that, during World War II, when wage and price controls were in, the government gave companies the right to offer health care to their employees, and employees get the right to get their health care tax-free. If you lose your health care and go into the individual market, you have to buy your health care with after-tax dollars. So I would like to see the playing field leveled so that individuals get that same opportunity. I actually think we shouldn't be getting our health care through our employers, but it's going to be very difficult to change that. But universal choice will lead to universal coverage. People should be able to, we need to expand the health savings account so that people can put that money away like they do now, tax-free, and they combine it with a high-deductible plan. But people should be able to put more money away just like they do in their IRA. People should be able to use the funding in their HSAs to help pay for their premiums Seniors should be able to also have an HSA, which is not allowed right now. So that's a very important point. One of the other major reasons why healthcare is so costly in this country is because of the mandates. Now, under Obamacare, there are 10 essential health benefits, and then each state has about 40 to 45 mandates: in vitro fertilization, alcohol rehabilitation. All of these things add 20 to 50% to the cost of a premium. Now, I may want a healthcare plan that has alcohol rehabilitation, but you may not. You may not want one with in vitro fertilization. People should be able to get the kind of plan that suits the needs of themselves and their families. And right now, these mandates make it very, very expensive. And as we saw with Obamacare, the whole healthcare system in this country was overturned for, at a maximum, 12 million people, 83% of whom get a subsidy to buy coverage. But the take-up of the exchange plans is very, very low, and unfortunately, it has not led to universal coverage. And we need to have options so that people can get coverage, reducing mandates, health savings accounts. Tort reform is a big issue, too. It costs about $210 billion a year for doctors to practice defensive medicine because they are afraid of being sued.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Those are all great ideas, and I hope that, we can get some traction on them. I mean, I remember 12 years ago, Sally, my basic, of course, I was 12 years younger, but, I was $60 a month. I was, young, and you can't even get
healthy.
that. Yeah, and healthy. You can't get that now anymore. If you're, a 22-year-old or something coming out of college, you can't get that price anymore. So.
No, because of all of these mandates. And that's why the young people paid that individual mandate penalty of 2.5% of income, or $695, because they didn't want to spend $400 to $500 a month on health care when they are invincible. So Obamacare was a disaster for the American people.
It really was. And I think any more government intervention, promising more and more is going to do the same thing. Sally C. Pipes, President and CEO of Pacific Research Institute, thank you so much for spending time with us this morning, and I'd love to do it again sometime. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing.
Oh, thank you so much. Take care.
All righty, you too. Folks, we're going to take a break. It's pacificresearch.org. If you want to know more, that's pacificresearch.org. And we'll be back here in just a moment. When the ruling came down.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. After the court decision came down, losing the Medicaid work requirement, which was another blow this session, it became clear that there was an effort to get the Medicaid budget through the legislature as soon as possible, preferably before anyone realized what was happening. And I don't know the motives behind that. I don't know if they just were worried that without the work requirement they wouldn't have the vote, or they just didn't want the headache of having the legislators have any input. But we adjourned in an unusual way on that Tuesday to have a budget meeting where the Medicaid budget was pushed through. Then the Senate voted it out just minutes before the court decision came through, which, maybe it's a coincidence.
Hey, folks, it's me, Paul Harrell. I want to say hello to everybody out there who's listening. We appreciate you and your support, especially those listening on KFPW, the Marshall out of Fort Smith, 96.7 FM, 1230 AM. For all of our listeners, if you ever missed the program, you can get us online at conduitnews.com, facebook.com/conduitnews, or our YouTube channel. Just search for Conduit News and be sure to click the subscribe button and click the little bell to receive notifications. Here at Conduit News Radio, we provide you multiple ways to listen to your #1 source for Arkansas news and politics. ConduitNews.com. Let's face it, times are tough for the Arkansas General Assembly. They're all waiting for the spotlight exposing public corruption to end, so they won't be under so much scrutiny. And during this time, what if you're a legislator and you need money? What if you're slapped with a huge expense? What if your check for consultant services is late this month? Or maybe you just need extra cash now until payday. When that happens, you can't wait. Hi, I'm Bobby Blackmail for the Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank, your trusted source to over 135 lenders to get you short-term cash fast. Use the Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank today, and you can have up to $12,500 cash in your checking account tomorrow. Dried up bribes no longer coming from Medicaid entities? Handled. Extra cash until your hopeful acquittal? Done. And you'll be surprised at how easy it is to get extra cash. Just be an elected official and be comfortable with the status quo, and we'll connect you with a fellow legislator who is ready to loan. It's quick and easy. And don't worry if you can't make the payments, because the Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank is designed to help you get through these tough economic times. There are other ways you can pay off your debt, like by voting the way the establishment wants, or by rewarding some with committee chairmanships. So forget about overdraft fees and the spirit of covetousness that sometimes overwhelms the best of lawmakers. Just remember, the Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank for short-term cash between colleagues when you need it fast.
Some transactions have long-term consequences.
Paul Harrell, parody.
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
The United States is now reviewing its plans, military plans against Iran. Headline, Saudi oil pipeline attacked by drones. Now, this is after yesterday's headline where the U.S. is accusing or holding Iran responsible for the deliberate sabotage of some Saudi Arabian oil tankers. Now Saudi Arabian oil stations attacked by drones, according to GulfNews.com. Saudi Energy Minister Khalid Al-Falih said on Tuesday that 2 oil pumping stations for the East-West pipeline had been hit by explosive-laden drones, calling the attack an act of terrorism. That certainly is complicating things. Then another headline, this is from Drudge, mystery shrouds sabotage, quote, sabotage of tankers. We don't know what that means. Like, I couldn't find yesterday what exactly was sabotaged. You know what I mean? Of course, we also yesterday had the Dow dropping a lot. Volatile day yesterday because of China's tariffs now on the United States. But this is, again, this is short-term pain. Short-term pain, at least this is the one of the thoughts. And it's a thought that I tend to agree with. Short-term pain. And, you have the mainstream media, all of a sudden they're for free trade. And they're talking about free trade. Don't buy it. The mainstream media is not for freedom generally. Of course, free trade is a good thing if we actually have it. And so that's the myth here. Is free trade is great if you actually have it. But if you have countries like China that are putting tariffs on our products and things like that. This is a long time coming. China says they will never relent, that they will never cave to outside pressure. That's what they say. The president is readying even more tariffs, from what I can tell. President Trump is at this point. So, and then we talked about this last hour. We do have William Barr assigning a top prosecutor out of Connecticut to review the Russia inquiry. This is a big deal. So you have this guy by the name of John Durham out of Connecticut. He will now be investigating, if he hasn't been already, what's been going on, what led up to the Russia collusion hoax that we now see before us. The Department of Justice, FBI, do they do things illegal? Do they spy on the Trump campaign? Do they spy on other campaigns? There's some allegations out there about that. This is in conjunction with Michael Horowitz, the Inspector General, and his report that's due out, and Utah Prosecuting Attorney John Huber, who has been investigating how the Department of Justice handled Hillary Clinton and the Hillary Clinton scandal of emails and things like that. So definitely something to be mindful of. Folks, when we come back, we're going to be talking with State Representative Joe Cloud. He will be giving his impression of the session, so we definitely want to stay tuned for him. And also, coming up in the next half hour, we will also bring you our meme of the day. And it's one of my favorites so far. Back in just a moment.
really buy that. And then, of course, the House tried to get it through less than 48 hours after the court struck down the work requirement. And, we weren't in the House really told, what's the game plan going forward? How are we going to change course now that we've lost the work requirement? And I just went back and, it's my third session, and I wanted to know what were we told the last two sessions on this, on Medicaid, on the private option. And so I just went back and read some press releases and looked and saw the words mostly from the governor about Medicaid and the work requirement. And, it became clear that that's kind of how we were sold. It was, well, we're going to keep Obamacare, but we're going to make it more conservative. We're going to do all these reforms, and we're going to do the work requirement, and that's going to make this program sustainable over time. And then now we don't have the work requirement, but we're still being asked to maintain it. And it's become clear, really, there's just this game where, every 2 years we're given some new, PR, some new case for why we should continue Obamacare in Arkansas. And, earlier when my first two sessions, it was, well, we're going to go for these reforms. Let's wait for the waivers. We're going to wait for the Obama administration, wait for the Trump administration to give us these waivers. Please, let's just wait. Let's keep doing what we're doing, but let's wait. So we waited for the waivers. Now we don't have it. So now it's let's wait for the court case. Let's just wait and see what happens with the court case. And so every 2 years, we just kind of kick the can down the road. Let's hope this thing works out. And meanwhile, we've got 250,000, 300,000 people that we're paying $500 a month for. And ultimately, I think that's what matters to a lot of people is that, the health insurance companies keep getting these billions and billions of dollars, and the people who are benefiting from that. And so I just felt like, we need to get organized. We need to stand up and at least say, I knew we probably wouldn't be able to hold the appropriation forever, but I knew, at least let's hear your plan. Let's hear what your idea is going forward now that we've lost the work requirement. And so we were at least able to get a few more days, and the governor came and spoke to us caucus, and, at least we as constitutional officers in the state of Arkansas were allowed to have some input, and we were allowed to present some Medicaid reforms like Josh Miller's bill.
Yes.
At least that got a vote before we got to vote on the appropriation again. So small win, but I will take it.
Yeah, it was a small win. I mean, your speech was just very a matter of fact. It wasn't, and I say this is a good thing. There wasn't emotion behind it. It wasn't an emotionally charged speech. It was a factual speech because you were using quotes. Now, one of the things, we're talking with State Representative Grant Hodges, one of the things you said from the House floor.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for being with us today. It's always great to have you guys listen. We can't do this without you. You know that, right? Folks, welcome back to the program. We've got State Representative Joe Cloud is back with us. Joe, how are you this morning?
Good morning, Paul. Very blessed. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. You are the state representative for District 71. Go ahead and remind us where District 71 is.
It is Russellville, Arkansas, Paul. Primarily most of Pope County, but it does not include all of Pope County.
All right. So we do these things called impressions of the session. So generally, I'll just turn it over to you. And State Representative Joe Cloud, what was your impression of the session 2019?
Well, of course, being a freshman legislator, Paul, I learned a tremendous amount about the process that goes on in Little Rock, Arkansas. I will freely admit that I was naive to a lot of things that go on there. So I guess my impressions would highlight the fact of how much you learn as about the system, getting the bills filed and passed into law, and everything that's surrounding that as far as the House leadership and the things that go on. I call it the politics within the politics. So that was the main thing that I learned.
Wow. Yeah, and you know what? I think there's other freshmen that would probably agree with you. You know, there is definitely a learning curve. What about policy goals? What was your impression of what actually occurred? You know, what did you guys get done that was good in your opinion?
Okay. Well, of course, once again, this was my first legislative session, and as we've heard, it was the greatest of all time. I don't think I can take credit for that, but in the governor's words, it was the greatest of all time. And, of course, that centers around his 4 T's, and those were all accomplished. So I know that his main agenda items were accomplished. As far as other things, the Bureau of Legislative Research, who helps the legislators file bills and craft the bills, it was kind of at a backlog for a while, particularly with the transformation bills that had to occur, 22,000 something pages. So that took a while. But we did pass some tax cuts. We passed some tax increase. We passed, which was dear to my heart, being a private practice OBGYN physician for 32 years, many pro-life bills that were signed into law. So that was particularly satisfying for me, and I appreciated being a part of that.
Yeah, that was a big deal. I have talked to a lot of people about the pro-life stance and Arkansas's pro-life positions and pro-life legislators like yourself, State Representative Cloud. And I think that was very telling. I was very thankful that while you had these other states like New York, Vermont, North Carolina, North Carolina, they were moving so far to the left, talking about killing babies after they're born. And then here's Arkansas that's like, well, you know what? We're gonna shore up the pro-life side of things. And Senator Rapert's bill that Mary Bentley carried in the House, which was essentially the abortion trigger law, that if a Roe versus Wade is overturned, Arkansas's anti-abortion laws go into effect. I thought that was really good and a good snapshot of what some parts of the country are doing versus what Arkansas is doing.
Yes. I was very humbled to be a co-sponsor on that bill and be able to speak on the floor of the House for that bill. I think it was a very important bill. And one thing to add to that a little bit, Paul, is, we've seen more recently in the last 2 or 3 months, several of our surrounding states are trying to pass pro-life legislation and so-called heartbeat bills. And I even have had some constituents say, well, why didn't y'all try to do that? So I'd just like to remind your listeners that a heartbeat bill was passed in the state of Arkansas and was struck down by Judge Susan Wright. So I don't want anyone to be confused, they're doing certain things, but they're not really doing as much as other states. Well, that's not the case. I mean, Arkansas right now, the legislature is very pro-life.
Yeah, a couple of years back, they did the heartbeat bill. They also did the pain-capable, Unborn Child Protection Act as well, which was more like a 20-week, and I think that's been lowered this past session down to 18 weeks, which is really good.
Correct.
Because the viability, science is just getting so far ahead, medical technology, and we're trying to save as many lives as we can when it comes to the most vulnerable. We're talking with State Representative Joe Cloud from District 71. Now, Joe, you mentioned that you guys passed some tax cuts. One of them was the $95 million income tax cut that will eventually materialize over the next couple of years, bringing that top rate from 6.9 down to 5.9. But then you also mentioned the tax increases. The gas tax increase. You also have the internet sales tax, and we also have the potential half-cent sales tax that will be maintained. It's set to sunset, but it's been referred to the voters. What I would like to know from you is when it's all said and done in the next fiscal year and the fiscal year after that, do you think the people of Arkansas are going to be sending more money to the government, let's say in fiscal year 2020, than they were before the 92nd General Assembly convened?
Great question. That was asked many times during the session. The pat answer is that the people will be saving more money. How much? Who knows? Now, let me kind of give you the caveat. We are increasing spending by 2.2%, which amounts to $124 million. So the government spending goes up every year. And so that always goes up. Now, the 2.2% is the lowest spending that Arkansas has increased in the last 10 years. So I guess what I'm trying to say is the good with the bad. The internet sales tax, particularly, you referred to that, and I'm sure you know, and maybe many of your readers know, that was couched in the same bill as the reduction of the corporate tax. And so that's one of those things where you say you hold your nose. I voted against it the first time around, and I just reached out to many of my constituents, the so-called brick-and-mortar folks, business folks. So I reached out to them and said, hey, this is a difficult vote for me, because one part of this bill I think is very good to lower that corporate income tax rate. Another part, we're going to increase the taxes as far as the internet sales tax. So my vote there, Paul, was just constituent-driven.
No, I understand. I've heard on that internet portion, for sure, people had to hold their nose. They didn't want to vote for more money from the people when it comes from, internet taxes. But they do support the corporate tax reform and everything else. I want to go back. I want to go back to my question, though, because my question is when you look at the revenue that's being taken from the people, and I mean in fiscal year 2020, 2021. I mean, I've got internet sales tax that these are DFNA's numbers projected to raise $43 million from the people. Then you look at the cigarette paper tax increase, that's $720,000. Gas tax increase, $57,000. And part of the reason is these taxes, the internet tax starts to be collected in July. The gas tax begins to be collected in October. The tax cuts don't fully go into effect, for another 2 years. So, for example, in fiscal year 2020, you're looking at the income tax cut. That's $95 million total. That's only going to be $25 million the first fiscal year. Then you do have a homestead property tax credit, which is a reduction in money going to the government of $12 million. But then you have the cell phone tax increase of $10 million and water bill fees increasing. So I guess that's my point is, do you agree that the people in those first couple of fiscal years and even further out, really, it seems that they're going to be giving more money to the government than before? Do you disagree with that?
Well, you certainly have a legitimate point there, Paul, but I would bring up in 2014, the legislature did decrease taxes by $100 million on the middle class, and then in 16 by another 50 or so million on the lower class. So if you factor that in, I think that is also pertinent information there.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, that you guys, the legislature has definitely reduced taxes in the past. There's no question. I'm just looking at, my whole metric for the economic freedom aspect of the session, State Representative Cloud, was at the end of the day, after you guys meet, are we paying the same amount to the government? Are we going to pay more? Or are we going to pay less? Once you lump it all together, I guess that's what because see, I look back at the task force, for example, and it was about tax relief. And when I think about tax relief, I think about the overall tax burden, and I think it's great. Like, I'm glad that we've made Arkansas more competitive by lowering that rate from 6.9 to 5.9. I think that's fantastic. But my metric, or at least I kind of feel like a lot of people's metric, but mine specifically is that overall tax burden. So
that bottom line.
Yes, sir.
Well, I totally agree, and that's what's important, right? It's the bottom line. That's what people have to pay. And once again, I don't guess I'm smart enough to know all these projections. I just know what we're told on the projections. And again, you do have a legitimate point that it's not happening right now, but over the next couple of years. But hopefully, I'll just say that with the transformation projected to save $15 to $20 million in revenue there, and you put all these things together, that within the next couple of years, Arkansas will certainly be a more tax-friendly state.
I certainly hope so.
Yeah.
Talk about we're talking with State Representative Joe Cloud. At the very end of the session, there was some controversy over the sanctuary cities. How did you feel about that issue in that particular bill that you guys did get passed and the governor signed?
Well, I was definitely voted for that. Sanctuary cities, Paul, my understanding, and I'm not a lawyer, obviously, but my understanding, by definition, those are illegal. So I can't understand why any state has sanctuary cities. And so I just considered this as a preemptive strike, if you will, against any future push toward that. Arkansas does not have sanctuary cities. As far as I know, there's no serious discussion in any of the cities becoming sanctuary cities. But I was 100% in favor of this legislation. And as was said up on the House floor, for those that were against it, will go through the process. Go through the process. If you want to legalize that, then you go through the process and see if you can get it legalized.
I think I was really pleased with the fact that you guys held firm on that issue. And we're able to get it through even at the last minute. A lot of times in these sessions I've seen when there's a controversial issue towards the end, people just say, you know what, we're kind of tired, we're ready to wrap this thing up, we're ready to go home.
Yeah.
That was not the case this time, and you know what, it was very pertinent because in the news a week later you had the potential scheme that the Homeland Security was thinking about taking these illegal immigrants and actually dropping them off in sanctuary cities. And so I thought it was really, really a good of you guys to do that. Last question on your impression of the session, sir, and I really appreciate you spending time with us. And I know you being a medical doctor, and I know going to medical school and everything else, you're going to have a specific point of view on scope of practice that maybe I don't have because I just don't have the knowledge that you have. But talk a little bit about scope of practice and trying to reduce some of these licensing requirements. I understand that's maybe just based on how you voted, that you maybe had some problems with that aspect, and so I'd love to get your thoughts on that, sir.
All right. I definitely did have some issues with some of the scope of practice bills, Paul. My general stance is we have created a licensure system. And my problem is, why should we come back and legislate that particular right or that increased scope of practice when you can obtain that license? For instance, the CRNA bill was one of them. Mm-hmm. And nobody could really explain to me exactly what we were trying to do with that bill. And so if you want more rights, more privileges, go earn them. Let's don't just legislate those things. And, medical doctors have certain rights and privileges, but they've earned them. They've gone through medical school, they passed their boards and their federal licensing exams and all of those sorts of things. It just seemed like there were an awful lot of scope of practice bills where people wanted to be able to do things that they weren't licensed to do, but yet let's legalize it. And so that's kind of my general stance as a medical doctor. But not just that. Let me hasten to say, Paul, if I should go over and try to work on someone's plumbing, I'm not licensed for that. I'm not trained for that. So should we just legalize that, hey, if you know how to use a crescent wrench, then, you can go do it. And that may seem simplistic to some of your listeners, but, again, I think it's applicable.
Dr. Joe Cloud, State Representative Joe Cloud, I appreciate your thoughts. I appreciate your time this morning, and thank you so much for being in public service, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thank you, Paul.
All righty. Have a great day. Folks, State Representative Joe Cloud, everybody. We're going to take a break. We're going to reset. We have our meme of the day coming your way next. Don't go anywhere.
Are you a conservative-minded young person and want to let the world know about it? Are you tired of rolling your eyes as your professor regurgitates progressive, PC, neo-Marxist nonsense? Then you should interview on Conduit News Radio's Young Conservative segment and tell us about why you believe the way you do. Tell us how you came to be a conservative and what are your views on government. Now, if you're worried that your neo-Marxist professor may also be a right-wing talk radio listening masochist, then names can be changed to protect the innocent. It's the Conduit News Radio Conservative Future segment. To be interviewed, call 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
But I don't really buy that. And then, of course, the House tried to get it through less than 48 hours after the court struck down the work requirement. And, we weren't in the House really told, what's the game plan going forward? How are we going to change course now that we've lost the work requirement? And I just went back and, it's my third session, and I wanted to know what were we told the last two sessions on this, on Medicaid, on the private option. And so I just went back and read some press releases and looked and saw the words mostly from the governor about Medicaid and the work requirement. And, it became clear that that's kind of how we were sold. It was, well, we're going to keep Obamacare, but we're going to make it more conservative. We're going to do all these reforms, and we're going to do the work requirement, and that's going to make this program sustainable over time. And then now we don't have the work requirement, but we're still being asked to maintain it. And it's become clear, really, there's just this game where...
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
All right, folks, welcome back to the program. Thanks so much for being with us. Let's see, 870-275-9799. I'm looking at some of your Facebook comments. Let's see, what do we have here? You can always get the program, by the way, if you're listening right now in the car. I just want you to know you can always go when you get to work and get the program on SoundCloud or iTunes if you want the audio-only version. But if you want to watch from your desk or something, you can go to the YouTube page. You can watch us do the show on YouTube. Just search for Conduit News and subscribe while you're there. Click the little bell to receive the notifications to get smaller videos. You can watch all of our impressions of the sessions that we've been doing, multiple ones, and they're very, very good. A lot of information there to get each legislator's reaction. You could also do it on Facebook if you don't want to do the YouTube. You'd rather watch us on Facebook. It's facebook.com/Conduit News, and as soon as the program concludes here in 5.5 minutes, we will throw it up. It'll be there for you to watch on Facebook as well. So if you at any point miss any part of the of the show, you can always go back and get it. Okay. I see Linda Collins, by the way, going to be in studio on Thursday with some special guest and Angel Mom as well. And I see on Facebook she writes about Chips Ahoy. I'm stunned. I would respond, no Chips Ahoy. This is in response to the drag queen. Chips Ahoy put out an advertisement with a drag queen telling people to get their Chips Ahoy cookies to celebrate Mother's Day. I don't know if you saw that. That was last hour we covered that. But let's get to our meme of the day. This is CNN. Yes. This, ladies and gentlemen, is what they would call a savage meme. For those of you who can't see what's on the screen, I can hear the online audience. I can hear you guys. You guys are dying laughing right now, right? Can you believe this? But this is exactly right. And there is, with any sort of, there's such a thread of truth here. So I covered this actually for 2 episodes 2 weeks ago. The President of the United States giving Tiger Woods the Medal of Freedom for winning the Masters, having this incredible sports comeback, it's maybe one of the most incredible comebacks of all time. And so Donald Trump, he goes around Tiger Woods to put the medal on Tiger Woods, and CNN, in this meme, this is not really CNN, but in the meme, the headline with the CNN graphic is Trump strangles black man. So, I mean, that's exactly something they would do, right? CNN specifically was furious, by the way. There is actually some truth in this, more so than you would think. They were furious with Tiger Woods and Donald Trump. They bent over backwards. I did a whole segment over it. They bent over backwards trying to convince you that this was just the president wanting to attach himself to Tiger Woods. And then you had Jim Acosta, who alleged that this was because of their secret business dealings, because Donald Trump paid Tiger Woods to design one of his golf courses. And that's really what this is, that Trump's secretly trying to make money. They were so upset that Donald Trump is friends with Tiger Woods, and that Tiger Woods was accepting the Medal of Freedom for his athletic accomplishments. And that's why this meme, this is CNN. Trump strangles black man. That's exactly what they would say. Anyway, if you have an idea for the meme of the day, you just got to send it to us. You can text me the meme, 870-275-9799. You can message us on Facebook. There's a lot of different ways to get us to get us what you think the meme of the day should be. We'd love to put that on there. Matter of fact, we're going to be posting this meme to our Facebook page and the Twitter, the Conduit News pages. So check out, stay tuned for that. And again, are you running? That's the question. Right now, everyone's trying to make decisions. Current politicians are in the decision phase. They're announcing, I am running. I'm going to seek another term. You have people challenging others in primaries, at least one in Northeast Arkansas between Dan Sullivan and John Cooper. And this is going to continue. And so my question again to you, the audience in Arkansas, are you running? Have you ever thought about it? Any position that you might be able to better serve. Especially if you listen to this program, you're going to be more bent towards limited government and principles and respecting the freedoms of your fellow man. You creators out there, those of you who are busy creating and making stuff, are you tired of those who can't be in an elected office taking the stuff they can't create themselves? Are you tired of it? I am. I know some of you out there have got to be. Have you thought about running? Okay, let's say you're not running then. Say you're not running. What are you doing to help someone who is? Are you donating? Are you giving money? Are you giving time? It's something to think about. Thomas Jefferson said the preservation of our society, it depends on an educated citizenry. Educated citizenry is indispensable to the proper functioning of a republic. That's what he said. Arkansas, go to Conduit News for this broadcast, more like it. And as always, be safe. We'll see you tomorrow.